One of the last things I left off discussing during lecture, and we have discussed, is the amount of money spent on education. We discussed that the fact that we have this recapture or this redistribution program, the Robin Hood program. We will take money from the rich districts, give them to the poor districts. And a lot of this is going to depend on how many students each district has and how much money they can spend, property tax rates, and a number of things go into it. But my question to you is, does money equal success? And if we look at this slide, and this is from the 2009 tax results, we can see the different school districts, the size of the enrollment, student to teacher ratio, what percent of the student body met the standards, and the revenue per student. So we see if we look at Houston ISD, the enrollment was almost 200,000 people. The student to teacher ratio was supposedly 16:6. That's not true. But the HISD spent on average of $9,969 per year per student. $9,969. We see that HISD, Houston ISD, had 69% of their student body meet the tax standard. Okay, well, let's go ahead and go down to Dallas ISD. Enrollment was 157,000, but they spent $10,248 per student, revenue per student, the last column. So they spent about $300 more than Houston ISD. So it's about the same. Shouldn't they have about the same percent pass? Well, you see that they only had 64% pass. Yet if you go down to Plano ISD, the next one, and it's a small school district, they only had about 54,000 students enrolled. They spent about $10,000, yet they had 89% of their students pass. And look at Wink-Loving ISD. Somehow or another, they were able to spend $23,000 per student. And yet, in 2009, only 73% of their student body passed the exam. So if we look at this, we can see, Plano had the highest percent, but they sure didn't come close to spending the most. But they didn't spend the least either. So, does money affect it? Does money make a difference? Apparently not. How much money we throw at education is not going to make a difference. We are now going to move into higher education. We're going to move into colleges. 90% of all students in Texas higher education and Texas colleges are enrolled in public universities. This is important because higher education is in part funded by the state. It is no longer funded as highly as it used to be, but the state still does provide some funding. We see that the state the state spends about 12% of its educational budget on higher education, on colleges. Higher education is somewhat governed by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. The board is responsible for appointing the Board of Regents, and for each university, the Board of Regents will outline the role of each public college and university. They're going to point out or develop what role they serve in the state and the community. We did not plan this well. And what I mean by that is the coordinating board has difficulty imposing a rational, coherent system upon their operation because we did not establish higher education in Texas systematically. We were very hit and miss. Our first university was University of Texas. Then years later, we do A&M, and there was no rhyme or reason to how we developed our higher education system, how we developed our college system in Texas. The Board of Regents, they're important because they will set the policies for their own institutions as long as they're within the guidelines established by the coordinating board. We're referring to four-year universities here. However, we also have two-year universities. We have these community colleges. Community colleges are also governed by the coordinating board, but they are also governed by locally elected boards of regents. So we have two different authorities over the community colleges. If we're looking at some of the higher education institutions, and this is just public institutions, we have the University of Texas system. We have Texas A&M system, the Texas State University system, University of Houston, the Texas Tech. When we say systems, like if we look at University of Texas, we know University of Texas at Austin, but where are some of the other branches that we have? Or the Texas A&M system. We know that they're located in College Station, but we also have A&M Corpus, A&M Kingsville. So these branches all fall under this one umbrella. What are the single campus institutions? Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin. What else is out there that's public? I'm sure there's some. I'm just drawing a blank. Texas Southern University, that would be one. If we look at higher education, we look at these pie charts, we see that these institutions, 90%, 90.4% of students go to public institutions. Only 9.6% of students go to private institutions. Private would be Baylor, TCU, SMU. But we can break it down even further if we're looking at community colleges, four-year universities. Community colleges, we're seeing that more students are actually attending community colleges first. 53.4% of students attend community colleges. 45% of students attend four-year universities. Then 1.6% of students will attend some health-related institution. They might be trying to get a certificate or something. The politics of higher education. We do see issues between the state and what we're doing with higher education, what we're doing with college education. The first is financial issues. What I have been telling you for a while now in this class, remember that in the early 2000s, the state legislature stopped funding colleges at a high level. What they did was they told colleges that they could raise tuition to make up for the shortfall. They deregulated tuition. The legislature says, we're not going to fund you as much, but you can raise tuition to make up the shortfall. Texas colleges have done this. Well, this has led to an issue where the price of colleges have skyrocketed. We are seeing courses that 10 years ago were $500, or they're now $1,000. These financial issues, this lack of funding, we are starting to price out college students. The poor, the middle class, are having difficulties going. And if they can go, if they can afford to go, we are seeing a number of students take out student debt. So when they graduate from a four-year university, they could have anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 worth of student debt. And this is depending on which four-year public university you go to. These financial issues, this funding for schools, leads to faculty issues and retention difficulties. Faculty issues, Texas does not pay their instructors well. The colleges don't pay their instructors well. It's because they are not getting funding. Well, instructors, like everybody else, they need to make a living. They want to eat. So we see instructors leaving the teaching field. We see good instructors leaving the teaching field, and they're going into the private sector because they can make more money. Well, this is a problem for students because if the school can't retain good professors, if they can't pay them enough to keep them, the students are not getting a quality education. There's also some discussion about diversity. And it is believed that diversity is very important to a good college education. And diversity can mean a number of things. It's not necessarily just being exposed or spending time with different races, different genders. It can be, different cultures, different ideas. Just having this exposure, it won't hurt you. It will expand your horizons. You start to consider other matters, or you look at things in a different way. Well, if these other people that provide this diversity can attend class or can attend school because we are no longer able to afford it. If we don't have the diversity, we don't have the exposure to other cultures, to other ideas. So this hurts our overall education. Does this mean the quality of education in Texas is bad? By no means am I saying that. If you look at the rankings done by the U.S. Education Department, you will see that actually Texas, in spite of all these difficulties, Texas still has 2 schools that rank in the top 50 in the United States. What 2 schools are these? These are going to be Texas A&M and UT, University of Texas at Austin. So we have issues in education, everybody does, but you can still get a quality education in the state of Texas.